Welcome to the Journey to CEO Success, where we explore the real stories, challenges, and turning points that shape extraordinary leaders. I'm your co-host, Melissa Saunders, and I'm joined by the Patrick Tian, award-winning serial entrepreneur, renowned CEO coach, and best-selling author, recognized by the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Amazon. Patrick's latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is the #1 Amazon bestseller and the inspiration behind this podcast. Patrick, you're looking good. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a great day to do a podcast.
It is. And today we're excited to welcome Roy Page, a business leader with more than 30 years of experience in strategic planning, marketing, and executive leadership. He currently serves as a partner at TobinLef, a strategy and execution consultant for rhythm systems, and co-founder of Crossings Addiction Recovery. Earlier in his career, Roy spent 24 years as CEO of Third Degree Advertising, helping build it into an award-winning agency. He's also an author, educator, and longtime leader with a deep passion for growth, strategy, and helping organizations succeed. Welcome to the show, Roy.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thank you so much for making time for being on our show today. It's wonderful. Wonderful to have you on here, man. Thank you so much. So let's start by taking about 3 minutes. Tell us what you guys do at TobinLef and
Sure.
tell us about that before we examine your personal journey.
Sounds great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Patrick. You and I go back a way. So this is fun for me.
We go all the way back to Third Degree.
We do. Yeah. Before there was a software, actually, I believe.
Yeah.
So yes, today I'm a partner at TobinLef. We are mergers and acquisitions advisors, primarily in the marketing communication space. I spent almost my entire career in that space. And our mission is to help business owners, agency owners, monetize their life's work. So we help them on the sale transaction, but we also do some buy-side work as well as management buyout work. So we cover the gamut of that exit planning and process.
And you only deal in that industry, in the marketing?
98%. I'm one of several partners. Most all of us have owned agencies, advertising agencies, public relations firms at some point in our history. So we're very comfortable and knowledgeable in that space.
Great. Thank you. So let's talk about your personal journey. So, this podcast, this show is all about helping CEOs have a more joyful and successful journey. And I like to say, I don't like the phrase, you can have your cake, but you can't eat it. I'm like, why would I buy a cake for you to eat? I want to eat my own cake. So to me, that's like, all jokes aside, I have quite a few friends who achieve success, but maybe they didn't have enough joy in their life. And so after I wrote this book, I came to the conclusion that actually you should have your cake and you should eat it too. In other words, you should have your success, but there's no reason why you can't have joy. And Stephen Covey says, oftentimes we make the fool's choice of A or B. And why can't it be, A and B creating C, D, or E, right? Usually the third, fourth, fifth option tends to be the better option than the fool's choice of being forced into either A or B.
Right.
So, you and I go way back, like we said just now, all the way to Third Degree. And you were there for 2 decades as the CEO. Tell us about your life journey and how you've discovered the combination of joy and success.
Yeah. Well, I think the title here, The Journey, is more than appropriate because it's certainly been that. And I haven't figured it all out yet. In many respects, I'm still trying to find what that peace and that joy looks like. I've spent the first part of my career I spent in sales, and I was terrible at it. I failed at it. But when I found that first job in advertising, that fit me. I found it. It clicked. I worked.
Those two are almost like kissing cousins. Like why is it that you were not successful at sales, but successful on the marketing side?
I had a crappy product to sell.
Okay.
Blame it on the product, right? Never yourself. I think I was just too young. I don't think I was passionate about it. I don't think I enjoyed, the selling process at the time. Eventually, I would grow into that. Obviously, as a CEO, you've sold, you've closed, and I've done more than my fair share of that. So eventually,
you're saying that the reason why you were successful in the beginning with sales is, I heard 2 things. One, not a very good product, and secondly, passion. You didn't like believe in that particular product.
I wasn't prepared to hear no as often as I
Mm.
heard no, right? So there were many reasons, but ultimately the agency world fit me. I became passionate about it. It was the kind of opportunity that where I literally, truly, I enjoyed getting up and going to work. And my wife used to say, how can you feel that way? It was the right fit. That
Mm.
was a calling, and I was comfortable in that role. And so after about 8 years of working for someone else and really learning an awful lot, I decided to step out with another partner who was also at the firm. So we left to start our own agency. He was more creative. I was more strategy. So it was a pretty good blend. And we knocked on doors and I finally heard some yeses. And you turn around 6 months, a year later, and you have a business, you have an enterprise that has potential and opportunity. And so it was born from that. I would eventually buy him out a few years later. The company wanted to grow. He wanted to keep it a little bit small. Great guy, still value and respect his skill set. But at
You
that
guys are
point
still,
in
you
time,
guys are still
I was ready to
friends,
grow.
still get along well, still
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, we don't talk a lot. There's a lot of
Yeah.
water under the bridge, and this was in a different market. I relocated back to my roots not long ago, Raleigh, North Carolina, and the agency I started was in the Midwest. So we haven't talked in a while, but yes, we were amicable for many years.
That's great. That's
I
great.
don't like to burn bridges.
But by the way, what is the secret to doing that? Because I know a lot of partnerships that dissolve, and it's hard to keep that relationships. What is the secret to? I shouldn't say secret, but what did you do, or what did he do that
Yeah.
preserved the friendship here?
Yeah. I think we just both realized that our visions separated from where we started. And I was respectful that he wanted to stay smaller, more boutique-ish. He was a little bit older than I was. I
Mhm.
was younger, a little bit more aggressive, I guess, wanted to accelerate more growth. And honestly, I can remember exactly walking into his office one morning after thinking about it, praying about it, talking to others about it. Because I didn't yet have the confidence to make my own decisions. I still don't in many respects. But I remember walking into his office that morning saying, Bill, I think we have two separate visions. You'd like for the company to remain a boutique. I would like to try and see if we can scale it and grow it. So I believe that leaves us with two options. Either you buy me out or I buy you out.
Well, the third option would be that you guys change your minds, right?
That would have been the third option, but
Yeah.
I don't think that was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we'd have brought a mediator in, maybe, I don't know, but he was pretty quick to say, I think you should buy me out. And there was a whole new level of stress. Yeah.
Well, it sounded like maybe he was also a little bit more ready to move on. You said that he was older. So
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think he went on to maintain a successful independent contract copywriting and design career that fit him.
So you've shared, I think, one of the for our audience, you shared a pearl of wisdom already, which is that you went and you had the spicy discussion with him. Probably wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. I
No.
do think that here's where to maintain both joy and success, I think maintain these relationships are important. Actually, I think if you let it drag on, like I've seen so many where you let it drag
Right.
on, you're afraid of the discussion, and when you finally have that discussion, the emotions are too raw now. I will burn it. Maybe we didn't try and burn the bridge, but maybe we burnt parts of the bridge along the way because we didn't resolve it. So you kind of hit it a little bit early where you could probably still, face some of these difficult things to face and move on as friends.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's a
Thank
good
you.
lesson. Yeah.
Well, looking back now, it was one of the best decisions I made, even though it was very stressful. It was the right decision at the time. And once we came to that conclusion, we tried to accelerate that process as quickly as we
Mhm.
could because I was ready to move on. The company was ready to move on. The team was ready to move on.
Thank you. Thanks for that lesson. So let's share more about your personal journey. Tell us more about your personal journey.
Well, that's a big question. There's a lot there in 3 decades. I think for a long time, my identity was tied up in the brand of Third Degree, typical entrepreneurial company that started primarily as a local or regional advertising agency, PR firm. I was based in Oklahoma City, and for good or bad, what really changed and accelerated and changed the trajectory of the company was the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah building. In that building, that federal employees
Yeah.
building, it was a federal building. Tough day for a city that I still dearly am very fond of. But from those ashes rose a credit union that was called Federal Employees Credit Union. And they wanted to rise from those ashes and create more of a community-based brand. So Third Degree was fortunate enough to win their confidence, and we helped change the brand of that credit union. And it gained national notoriety. So call it luck. What followed was maybe more strategy, but it was a very emotional project. Our team thoroughly enjoyed it and loved it. They paid us in 15 days. My CEO said, "You go find every credit union around the country you can find to do business with. We'll try." But it was such a great experience. We wanted, Oklahoma City, it's not a market where you think of enterprise and entrepreneurship, even though it's there. It's just not. And so our leadership team said, how do we take our brand and how do we create a national footprint? And that was our opportunity.
Mm.
We were able to leverage that opportunity at a time where the industry was shifting to where credit unions could compete more on a community basis. And so we became community-based brand experts and worked with credit unions nationwide. So that was a strategic initiative we set out to accomplish. We put our minds to it. We put our strategy and our marketing behind it. And a few years later is when I met you, not long after we began
Yeah.
that strategy. And of course, Rhythm helped us accelerate it.
Yes. You shared a lot of good lessons here. You actually, because of that misfortune in Oklahoma City, you guys actually found your niche. You guys found your specialty,
We
or
did.
you found your core customer, I like to say. And you kind of doubled down on that and said, how do we do
Yeah.
this? So that's one key part to success. Let's talk about the joy side of that equation. I noticed that in your life, you've got sailing, you've got a nonprofit you're working with, and you have something called the Peace Index.
Yeah.
It helps you when you're out of balance. I think these are some key things that could help people. But tell
Yeah.
me how you came up with it, how you got into sailing,
Sure.
and how this Peace Index works, and the nonprofit. I'm sure these
Well,
really feed your soul.
for all the success that we had, let's be real, there's challenge. And I've got a lot of failure in there too. I mean, I just believe it's failure, but I was fortunately able to learn from failure. And so I took risks and I was able to learn. The recession in 2009, that was a tough year. Actually, 2008 was our best year in business, followed
Mm,
by 2009, which was the worst year in business.
yeah.
And that same year, unfortunately, I lost my father. My father passed away. And I had some other life challenges that were transpiring. And so that was a really difficult time. And it was hard to battle back years later through that. And I made some decisions, quite honestly, that were not good, not healthy for me to have made. But I was smart enough to draw on experts outside of me. I knew Roy didn't have the skill or the knowledge necessarily to address that and navigate and grow through that. So I asked for help, professional peers, life coaches, counselors, pastors. I was grabbing at everyone I could possibly grab for. I would eventually come through that. And what I learned was that I don't believe I could ever find balance. You hear work-life balance talked about a lot. And I'm not going to cuss on your podcast here, but I think it's BS, honestly. I don't believe it's achievable. I'm speaking from me and my experience. What I do believe is that you can be at peace with where you are. And
Okay.
if you can find that position of peace, you can then put yourself back on a positive path of growth. And so that's kind of where this peace came from. And there are different dimensions that involve that. There's your financial, your spirituality, your relationships, family, there's work. So all those things kind of come together to create sort of a level playing field or sense of peace, at least for me.
Yet your Peace Index helps you know when you're out of balance, right? So the irony
Yeah.
is the word balance is there. So tell me what
Yeah.
you mean when you say that you don't believe in balance, but your Peace Index helps you know when you're not at peace, and it helps you maybe make some different decisions. But what is it about the word balance
Yeah.
that you didn't think made sense?
Yeah. I think we have to be self-aware of where we're falling short, where we're struggling. There are signs usually on the wall, and we need to recognize what those are, and we need to address those. And so if we have 5 dimensions of our life that form our peace, and one or
Yes.
2 of those are completely out of whack. So we're talking about self-assessment.
Yes.
That's the time to catch it. That's
Gotcha.
the time to deal with it so that
So
we
do
can
we all
bring
have
back.
different, do we all, when you work on the peace index, do we all create our own separate peace index with different dimensions? Because certain things may be more important to you, less important to me.
Yeah,
But,
true.
but, but certain things are universal, right? Like health is universal.
Yes,
What do you exercise, sleep, that kind of stuff? There's some physiological stuff
right.
that you're trying to get away from. So would there
Yeah,
be a couple of items on that index that is universal and then some which are much more personal?
absolutely. And it's different for different people, right? I mean, you and I, we've talked about this. We exercise, we work out. And if I miss, then I know that that particular dimension of my personal well-being is suffering. So I've got to make
Mm,
some corrections. I got to find time because that's out
yes.
of balance and that can affect other areas for me.
Yes.
So it could be different. Different people will put weights in different areas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you, like, just for the learning of our audience, what's on your peace index? What are the few things on there that if I want to build my own peace index,
Right. Yeah.
an example would be very helpful.
Well, there's certainly the faith piece for me. There's the health piece for me. There's the financial element. I hate to say it, but I'm not ready to retire. It's not in my DNA. It's not anytime in the future, but let's face it, I need to be responsible there. And so there's that aspect. And then there's relationships,
Okay.
friends, family. So those are a few of the things that are most important to me. And
Okay.
there's my profession, of course.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how do you keep this faith? Is this peace index something you've actually written down, or is it like kind of psychological in your mind?
Yeah. It's written down. I actually did a session for one of my advertising agency clients several years ago. And so it's written down and I'll use it from time to time. I do some counseling, if you will, particularly in the
Yes.
recovery community around addiction. That's near and dear to me. And so I'll use it there oftentimes because someone who's in recovery coming out of that life challenge is often trying to figure out
Mm.
what does balance look like for them? What does peace look like for them?
Yeah.
So I'll use it to help them determine that.
I love that. So is this something you would update every week?
I'm not that regimented about it, but
Because I'm Mr. Rhythm, right? I like updating things.
I think a monthly inventory is
Okay.
always appropriate. But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing you could wake up every morning and look at your dimensions or your domains and go, how am I
Yeah.
doing? Am I
Yes.
75% today? Am I 80%? And if you're 45%, then maybe you need to spend a little more energy on that.
And
You
and
could do
and
it. You
so
could do it
I
daily, weekly, monthly.
yeah, and I understand what you mean by balance. In other words, when you say balance, we're not saying there's 5 things on my peace index. I gotta be 20% perfectly across the board. But there may be times when needed flex. One part of your life needs more
Absolutely. Yeah.
energy than the other. I think that's what you're getting at. It's
Yeah.
not just a balance all every single day, all exactly the same.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
what part of your life needs that attention so
Yeah.
that you can get back to a good peace index, I think is how I would interpret.
That's a great interpretation. And, looking back when I broke, and I did, there was that period of time, it was burnout, but that's a
Yeah.
whole nother podcast. But I literally, I burned out. I didn't know it. I didn't know what it was at the time. But once I was able to put business and just kind of focus on Roy and just sort of reset, it's a breath of fresh air. And then I was able to look at this peace index and decide this is a tool that I can leverage for my own personal health and recovery. And it was a great experience, which is also, you talked about sailing earlier.
Yes.
I also got back into activities that I enjoyed doing that work had taken the place of. And so the sailing piece was part of my healing. So that was kind of the spiritual,
Yeah.
adventurous side of me that's important. Yeah. So
You
I
know,
reset. It was a great
I think
reset.
guys like you and me, sometimes because we work too hard, frankly, when we're younger in our life, we're just so work focused. I think that's when we can experience the success but neglect the joy until we
Absolutely.
get kind of later in life. So I'm glad that you figured out
Yeah.
sailing is part of your joy.
It is.
I think that what's interesting is you call it a peace index. I actually have something very similar, right? I call mine the joy index. Like,
Mm.
how joyful are you? And so yours speaks more about balance, and mine speaks more about positivity towards joy. but they're really a very similar tool. Very similar tool.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Thank
So yeah, tell me about sailing. So sailing is something you enjoy, and what
Yeah,
do you do?
yeah, it's, my first sailboat, my parents bought me. It was an 11-foot sailboat. I grew up on the East Coast, East North Carolina. We spent our summers on the Pamlico River, Pamlico Sound. So I sailed from the time I was 11 years old. Every
Wow.
summer I'd sail up and down. So it was something I was accomplished at it. And then life, moving to the Midwest, where there's not a lot of water other than lakes, you just get busy and you find other things to occupy your time. But when I was recovering from kind of my burnout period, I made a decision as part of my recovery plan, my personal strategic plan, and that was to
Yes.
get back to things that I enjoyed. And
Yes.
that spiritually fed me. And I
Yes.
found that sailing did that. It's peaceful, it's joyful. You have no control over the weather, the wind, the waves, all of these elements you can't control. But with the right skill, you can navigate that boat in any kind of condition. So there's a correlation to me between, at the time, it was personal recovery and spiritual fulfillment and joy of things that I love. And I love the water. I would spend every day on the water if I could. I really would.
Roy, we're coming to close of our podcast, but before I ask you my final question, I want to kind of summarize some key things because you've given us a lot of good nuggets here. I think having a peace index, some way for you to kind of take stock of where you are, so that you catch yourself before you fall off the cliff, so to speak. That's a key lesson I'm learning from you today. Another one is about making sure that in your life you preserve the things that you
Mm,
enjoy. So as we get really busy on the success side, the joy
yeah,
side takes a dip because we forget, actually, or we get too busy to do the things that we love and enjoy. For you, it's sailing. So for people out there, make sure that you continue to do the things that you enjoy. Don't sacrifice everything for
right.
work. Because I've found, even for myself, sometimes not making that sacrifice, right, doing the things you love and enjoy, puts your brain in a different place where thinking happens,
True.
uh, and it helps you actually solve some other problems that you maybe couldn't solve because your brain was in a vice. And then I really admire what I've heard today, Roy. I think you've gone through a lot of life lessons, and you've gotten up and you've said, "Hey, what can I learn from that? Right? What can I learn from that?" And even though I've had these storms, I can learn and move on. So you truly live not the fool's choice. In other words, the fool's choice is let's
Yeah.
choose success over joy. And you've been able to say, nope, I'm gonna have both. So
Yeah.
congratulations for that. So this
Thank you.
podcast is all about helping CEOs achieve a life of joy and
Yeah.
success.
Great question. I'll try and keep it brief because there's a lot there. I think first is take care of yourself emotionally and physically. Be self aware and know when you're being challenged and know when you're not feeling peaceful. It's a gut check. I think most people will know that. And then don't let it sit. Hit it head on, man. Just acknowledge it
Hmm.
and tackle it head on. Get it behind you sooner. I wish I'd have gotten some of those things behind me sooner. And I think the other is to draw down on the experts. Use the experts that have applied life experience. Use your peers. Figure out what your go-to source of help is and nurture that. And I had a lot of those things along the way, but I am more likely to address challenge much sooner today than I was 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So maybe there's a tidbit or two there.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
So,
Roy, thank
definitely.
you so much. Melissa, back to you.
thank you.
Yeah, it's almost you need to talk about the thing you don't want to talk about because it kind of hurts and it's a little awkward. So,
Yeah,
yeah, Roy,
very
thanks
true.
so much for joining us today and sharing your journey and your leadership insights. And thanks all of you for listening to the Journey to CEO Success. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and join us next time for another conversation with the CEO about really what it takes to grow a business, lead well, and be joyful. Until next time, bye now.
Bye now. Thank you.